afraid of the dark?
I have one story that I heard from a professor at the law school located nearby the city where I live. There is a lake, a favorite relaxation spot for all the townsfolk. As soon as summer begins, long caravans of cars stretch from the city, just an hour's drive away, and here comes nature, warm water, grass, perfect relaxation. A fragrant smoke rises above the ground where they grill kebabs, children splash around in the shallows, ladies in swimsuits get sunburned. But despite the locals' love for this place, the lake is almost like the epicenter of all sorts of paranormal phenomena. There are chilling horrors per square meter here that you won't find anywhere else. For example, starting from the 70s, they say you can meet Olivia, a swimmer, a girl in a swimsuit who, as rumors have it, once, being a young girl excessively proud of her sports achievements, swam too far and drowned. She doesn't harm people, but encounters with her haven't been pleasant. They say on clear sunny days, a person swims peacefully, and suddenly in the water, they'd bump into the stiffened and swollen body of a drowned woman, and Olivia can suddenly emerge from the depths, grabbing the swimmer with her cold, twisted fingers, or just swimming. And when someone starts shouting that there's a drowned person here, Olivia disappears again. There are plenty of such cases here, but for this story, the basis was a very real case that happened somewhere in the late 80s. The holiday bases are located on the shore. In those years, they all belonged to some enterprises, and this base wasn't an exception. It belonged either to some enterprise or institution, I don't exactly remember. On one of the shores, you can still see the remnants of an old house that never stood there. A year-round caretaker lived there, whom everyone called William. Summer at the base was always good, but in winter, it was a bit boring. And one day in the middle of winter, a commission arrived at the base, consisting of 3 people, 2 men and 1 woman, to check, count the property, and the like. William was very pleased with their arrival. He was a sociable person. In winter, almost no one came to the base, and you sit alone, nowhere to go, just walk around your territory. All the same, entertainment TV sometimes shows something good, sometimes bad. In short, William decided to treat the commission. For their stay, he took them to the best winter house, set the table himself, and put out the best of what he could get from the provisions. The commission was also not averse to treating themselves and put out a bottle of vodka. William didn't usually drink, but in good company, why not? In general, they sat and didn't leave until past midnight, eating, talking, and finally went to bed. In the morning, when William got up, the sun was already high and he overslept. It seems that the members of the commission also overslept. No one came out of their house. William waited a bit, thought, and went to wake them up. In the house, a terrible scene awaited him. All 3 members of the commission lay dead, chopped with an axe. Blood and horror everywhere. William, beside himself with madness, ran away screaming that the commission was killed. He ran about 2 kilometers to the nearest police post, where he collapsed, repeating that the commission was killed. The police arrived from the city. Among them was my acquaintance, a young investigator. After inspecting the crime scene, the police decided to immediately arrest William. Everything around pointed to him as the perpetrator. The axe with which the victims were killed was his own. The traces around were also his. William was taken to prison. He himself was most shocked by this. He screamed that he was innocent, that someone framed him. No one who knew him could believe that this good-natured man, who wouldn't even hurt a fly, could be a killer. And what motives could he have had? Everything was in order at the base. He had nothing to fear. Nevertheless, William sat in prison, awaiting trial and a sentence that could end in execution. And then during lunch, an incident occurred. The prisoners were sitting at the table. One of them was serving the prison food to the rest, when suddenly one of the guards noticed William, who was sitting at the table. The prisoner's gaze suddenly became cloudy, and his face contorted, which made the experienced guard wary. And then William suddenly jumped up and lunged at the one who was serving food. They pulled him away from his victim, and William, swaying, lost consciousness. When he came to, he was surprised and began to ask what was happening, why everyone was behaving so strangely. In reality, it was terrible. William was mentally ill. During the investigation, his mother recalled that in his early childhood he had had seizures, but they passed and no one even suspected any deviations in his brain function until that fatal moment. In his usual state, he was a calm, good-natured, harmless person, but during a seizure, consciousness turned off, and a ruthless monster woke up in him. Apparently, at the base, the seizure was provoked by alcohol consumption, and in the end, he was declared insane. Instead of prison, William was sent to a specialized hospital, from where he was discharged after some time. He left and disappeared from view. But then rumors started circulating that he was killed in some fight. They say that sometimes on a winter night, if you come to that place, you can see that the old, long decayed house looks like it's fully lit up in the windows. And cheerful members of the commission are sitting at the table with William, endlessly celebrating something. They also say that if they see an observer, they will surely start inviting him warmly to come in, warm up, have a snack, and have a drink for warmth. But they also say that you must not accept their invitation under any circumstances. You won't come back. Clinical doctors are essentially atheists. Most of them absolutely believe that the treatment they prescribe will help. But there are cases when the treatment doesn't help, and suddenly a real miracle happens, and the patient inexplicably recovers, defying any rational explanations. And then there are completely mystical cases that are remembered for a lifetime. When I recall this episode in my life, I still get goosebumps. Therefore, I do not recommend sensitive souls to listen. I was a student on practice at the maternity hospital. We were taken to the neonatal intensive care unit. An hour before our arrival, a newborn baby died there. When a person dies in a hospital, it is customary to keep them in the ward for 2 hours, establish biological death, and only then transport them to the pathology department. As a rule, the body stiffens after 2 hours. We approach the baby with the nurse after the allotted time. She examines him, gets very scared, and starts calling the doctors. We can't understand anything. Then she says the whole baby stiffened, but the neck and head did not, and this means that the baby as if looks around to take someone else with him. As soon as she said that, another newborn in the intensive care unit suffers cardiac arrest. Everyone rushes to him, starting resuscitation. Another premature baby lay in an incubator nearby. He was 26 weeks old. Everything was relatively normal with him. He was developing well outside his mother's body, and there were all chances of his further discharge in a healthy condition. He also suffers cardiac arrest. The 2 teams of doctors are desperately trying to save their lives. And that nurse screams, Urgently take the dead baby out of the ward, call the workers, let them nail nails in every corner of the intensive care unit. Usually doctors believe in their treatment until the last moment, but here it was necessary to take different actions. They found a worker, and he nailed nails in every corner. And after some time, the condition of these two babies improved, and they safely began to recover. We, the students, experienced a terrible shock. And that nurse said that in her practice this happened several times. Sometimes even these measures didn't help, and the dead baby still took someone away. This is a terrifying story about a deceased person that occurred in early autumn when it was still relatively warm, as much as possible at the end of September. One day in the village they discovered that Billy, as everyone called him from young to old, had disappeared. Although he was far from young in years, he behaved like a child. He never tried to settle down, find a good job, or start a family, although he didn't look like an outsider. He wandered through forests and swamps all the time. He had an idea, a sort of intrusive idea, so to speak, the dream of a lifetime. Billy wanted to find the Devil's Cemetery. The legend of the Devil's Cemetery was known in our village. Almost everyone knew about this place, which, according to rumors, was strewn with the bones of dead animals and people. Anyone who approached this clearing too closely immediately felt a sense of longing, a reluctance to live. They told scary stories about the deceased who guarded this Devil's Cemetery. They were like guardians. They all died in this place and now try not to let anyone in. But as you understand, it didn't fit well for children's stories, although there were enough enthusiasts of paranormal phenomena around. As far as I remember, there were 2 expeditions to find this Devil's Cemetery. As you probably guessed, they ended up with absolutely nothing, although many researchers said that the clearing should be in our area. Oh, it should be there, only nobody from the locals ever stumbled upon it, although they knew the forest like the back of their hand. So Billy was busy all his life searching for the Devil's Cemetery. It's unclear why he needed it. According to legends, it's just a dead clearing, but the blessed have their whims. And then one day his mother reported that her son had disappeared. Out of faithfulness, they waited a day, maybe he would come back, and then reported it to the police, organized searches. Some of our people also went to search the surroundings. They searched continuously for a week, and then started to calm down. And a few months later, I heard this terrifying story from Uncle Stephen, who had had a few drinks and started to tell how they were looking for him that day. They went into the woods. They went further than usual, walking in a wide line so that everyone could see each other, but the further they went, the wider they spread, and at some point Stephen looked and didn't see anyone nearby. He shouted for them to go on, and then suddenly looked. There was a clearing in the shape of the letter S, without grass and trees, bushes. The ground on it was dark, as if burnt, and bones, remnants of bird feathers, half-decomposed skeletons were scattered everywhere. But what caught his attention was not that. Right in the middle of the clearing lay a person. Stephen immediately felt uncomfortable in his chest at the sight of the familiar jacket. And when he walked a little closer and saw Billy's white, lifeless face, even his legs trembled. From the surprise, his head spun. He didn't even notice how he stepped onto the scorched earth, covered his nose with his sleeve, and rushed away. He ran to the river, went down to the water, washed himself, seemed to come to his senses, lay on the bank, pondering. The river flowed kilometers away from him. He couldn't have wandered that far. He crossed himself and went back into the forest, only calculated so as not to stumble upon the devil's cemetery. That is, he went around it, took a big detour, walked for half a day until he heard voices. He ran to them. The men from the village didn't say anything at that moment. It seemed to him that he had imagined it all, especially since they continued in the same direction where this clearing was supposed to be. The next day they reached the Kankambara River, but found no dead place. Further search was pointless. There was such taiga there that even 20 helicopters wouldn't help. Finding nothing, they all concluded that Billy had perished. Although Stephen told me that maybe he didn't imagine it after all. And yet there is a devil's cemetery. Billy eventually found it, and that's where he stayed.